Ryan Preece finished last in the Wurth 400 at Dover Motor Speedway on Sunday for the 7th time in his NASCAR Cup Series career after his #41 Morton Building Ford caught fire after completing 66 of 400 laps. And this has led to some backlash from fans, but also from Preece himself. Why do the Fords keep burning up? On lap 22, in-car footage revealed smoke curling over the frame rail. On lap 30, the smoke appeared to decrease, but it did not totally disappear. At the moment, the car appeared to be moving quickly as he passed Harrison Burton for position. Preece's cockpit smoke worsened after the race restarted. By lap 62, he'd dropped 2 laps down in 35th, and the crew radioed, "There's shit all over the in-car camera. If it's smoking, then we'll have to take it to the garage." Sure enough, live footage from NASCAR Drive revealed particles of black debris on the camera lens, which was located close behind the source of the smoke. Until then, the lens had been clear. Soon after, NASCAR Drive altered the angle to Preece's roof and was turned off altogether. "It's in the door. It's the foam," Preece said. Around lap 71, Preece stopped down pit road and headed to the garage, where he requested a fire extinguisher. On lap 74, he was passed to become last place. On the 88th lap, Preece's crew radioed, "Tony, Mark, we're done. That melted all the door foam, and we can't run without any foam in it." On lap 91, the crew stated, "We need to make sure this door is cool enough before we put it in the hauler." NASCAR deemed Preece the first car out on lap 95, claiming exhaust, but the remainder of the message was jumbled, mentioning the foam in the door. NASCAR's official results reported his explanation as safety, the first among NASCAR last-place finishers. However, NASCAR.com and Racing Reference Info described it as fire. When interviewed at the garage, Preece refused to discuss the cause of the incident, although he did remark how needless it was and his fear that it may have ignited the oil line. Ryan Preece was clearly dissatisfied with the fire that broke out inside his car and interrupted his race early at Dover Motor Speedway. Before the race had completed 30 laps, Preece's number 41 Stewart Haas Racing Ford Mustang Dark Horse began to smoke inside the cockpit. The crew originally assumed it was rubber accumulation burning in the rocker, something Preece's teammate Chase Briscoe suffered with on Saturday. The mechanics worked on the vehicle during the lap 39 yellow before Preece resumed to the race. However, because to the excessive smoke, he had to pit again. It still wasn't good enough to solve the problem, so the car was ultimately taken to the garage, where the crew decided the race was ended. "I felt like I was on fire, and I went the first 70 laps just trying to push through, and then it got so bad that I couldn't put my hands on the wheel," Preece told reporters. "I was worried that an oil line or something would melt, and then the whole car gets engulfed in fire, and I don't want to be trapped in there having that happen, so I pulled off. Whatever happened, it was completely unnecessary, and we can't afford days like this." Preece did not provide information as to what caught fire. The crew initially speculated that it was rubber, and before heading to the garage, it was assumed to be the foam inside the door. "I'm not going to be the one to say what happened, but it wasn't necessary," Preece said. "It could have been prevented." Preece was the first driver to leave the Wurth 400. He placed 37th. Following the premiere of the next-gen car, numerous Fords had fires caused by the safety foam covering the side panels. It came to a head at Darlington in September 2022, when another SHR car piloted by Kevin Harvick caught fire, forcing him to abandon the smoldering vehicle. "I just stopped because I couldn't see anymore because the flames were coming through the dash, and I couldn't make myself sit in there and burn up," Harvick said at the time. "I'm sure it's just crappy parts on the race car like we've seen so many times," he added. "They haven't fixed anything. It's kind of like the safety stuff. We just let it keep going and keep going. The car started burning, and as it burned, the flames started coming through the dash. I ran a couple laps, and then as the flame got bigger, it started burning stuff up. And I think right there you see all the brake fluid that was probably coming out the brakes and part of the brake line, but the fire was coming through the dash." During Harvick's caution, J.J. Yeley brought his Ford into pit road. NASCAR officials were forced to call off the restart because Yeley's vehicle was also engulfed in flames. Earlier that year, at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course, both Chris Buescher and Joey Logano in Fords experienced in-car fires. Following the occurrences at Darlington, NASCAR announced various rule modifications before to the next race at Kansas in an attempt to solve the concerns. There were no other complaints of foam catching fire in a Ford or any other automobile. That's till Sunday. Preece, for his part, was not prepared to blame the foam. However, the race was exciting, at least it looked like it. But this Sunday, yet another thing stood out. Where was Ford? It was another race where Ford was more in a bad spotlight rather than a good one. And after 11 races, it seems like Ford is nowhere near the front. In fact, there only seem to be 2 teams being able to challenge for victory lane at the moment. And the drama in Dover, from the green flag to the last fight, was the latest chapter in an ongoing conflict between 2 gigantic teams, where Joe Gibbs Racing and Hendrick Motorsports have dominated the headlines. After 3 seasons, it looks that the next-gen car is losing some of its surprise. The well-acclaimed parody of tiny clubs vying for victories against larger ones is no longer present, and it has even come so far that one of the manufacturers isn't even able to fight for victory. The previous 2 seasons produced 25 different winners from 12 different teams. Many of these triumphs were more than just fortunate superspeedway victories, with the eventual winner going up front and leading a significant number of laps. This previous balance has soon disappeared as the 2024 season begins. Only 2 teams have dominated the first 11 races, with the exception of superspeedways. Dover provided yet another example Sunday afternoon. Don't take this the wrong way, the race still looked promising on paper. Several drivers held the lead for extended periods of time, but no one truly dominated the race. Even toward the finish, most people predicted Larson would make a run at Hamlin. This frequent subject comes practically every week. A bunch of drivers alternate leading sections of laps, making races seem a little more competitive. When you look at the pylon, or video board, depending on the track these days, the front of the grid usually contains roughly 8 common denominators. Regardless of the circuit, discipline, or weekend, Joe Gibbs Racing and Hendrick Motorsports battle for the lead, with Tyler Reddick and 2311 Racing back only a few steps behind. The rest of the field continues to be uneven in terms of who finishes in the top 15. The 2024 season has so far failed to live up to the car's selling pitch, which was that underdogs could compete with the big players. This may not be a huge drawback, however, but it is telling, especially for Ford, who only seems to be catching flames instead of wins. While Miles the Monster loomed big throughout the weekend, the NASCAR heavyweights driving for Gibbs and Hendrick provided yet another duel in what will undoubtedly be a heavyweight bout for the ages this summer. Hamlin and Larson have traded punches over the last several seasons, and when you think about it, the Hendrick drivers as a whole have had a lot of issues with the Gibbs team. However, in previous seasons, the wide range of victors and underdogs saturated the headlines, labeling many of the instances as racing incidents. Through 11 races, Dover demonstrated again that the top teams can no longer hide. Larson and Hamlin were courteous to each other on Sunday. As the season advances and desperation intensifies, so will the intensity and the tensions. And in Ford's case, it will hopefully mean coming even close to victory lane soon. But at this moment, it seems highly unlikely. First, they'll have to get on top of their car problems, and only then can they try to fight for victory lane. But at this moment, there is no way to stop the Chevy and Toyota or the Gibbs and Hendrick domination. It seems like this year will be decided between the drivers of those 2 teams. What are your thoughts on Ford's ongoing problems? And what about this season? Are you enjoying the races, or do you want to see more unpredictability? Let me know in the comments down below.